Welcome to episode 38 of the Free Spirit Academy podcast with cookbook author and blogger Megan Gilmore, also known as the Detoxinista. Free Spirit Academy is about you being fully you. My name is Randy Moss, and I'm an eating psychology coach and Kundalini yoga teacher, bringing you conversations about freedom. Largely from rigid diets and painful body image, but ultimately it's about the freedom to be yourself. This is about honoring our own bodies and our purest self-expression. Welcome to the podcast. So something I love, in fact, you know what, I'm just going to start with something that you said in the introduction to your website, your blog. You said, while many people associate the word detox with juice fasting or fad diets, I prefer to take a more moderate approach by simply eating well on a daily basis. And why I love this is because you and I both come from a background of extremes. And when people hear Detoxinista, I'm sure they often get either really excited that you're going to offer them some sort of extreme detox diet, or they sort of freak out and run away because they're afraid of what they won't be able to eat anymore. But you don't actually take either approach. So,
right. Yeah.
I'm curious just to start, like really, really basic. How did you even get into wellness and creating recipes in the first place?
Well, I think I got into wellness because I'd been raised on a junk food diet. So people are always surprised that like I was not raised with like a crunchy mother who made granola or, you know, anything. Like we ate fast food every day of my life because I was a military brat and we moved every year because my dad was in the Air Force. So I got into the health world because I had gained a lot of weight in college when I finally stopped being active. Like I had been on the track team in high school and danced, and I feel like all those things kind of let you get away with a poor diet for a while. And then when you start slowing down, it starts catching up with you. So in college was really the first time I had to ever try dieting. And some of my girlfriends introduced me to, you know, whatever diet they were doing at the time. I had tried everything like Atkins, and the Zone diet was really popular back in the day with Jennifer Aniston doing it. And so I would say I got into the health world probably in the worst way, just because I was trying all these diets and I didn't like the food I was eating. So I didn't think it tasted very good. It was really boring. Like eating, you know, plain chicken and vegetables was like totally foreign to me. I was so used to eating McDonald's or like the boxed brownie mixes that my mom used to make. So I kind of got into the healthy like recipe world by just trying to recreate the flavors I loved, but still staying on track with the diet I was following at the time.
So were you blogging and going through these various diets and it's like, I'm on this one diet and everything I'm doing is sort of lining up with this?
Yeah, I mean, the blogging kind of came later. I definitely wasn't blogging in college, but the blogging came when I moved to Los Angeles with the boy I met in college. My husband and I started dating. We had been friends for years, and we were in the same classes in college. The illustration class in the college we went to is very, very small. So we all became really close friends. And when he was going to move to Los Angeles, I was kind of sad about it and realized I had a crush on him, and we started dating. And so we didn't start dating until after we were out of college. But about a year after we started dating, we moved to Los Angeles together, and we moved in one car. And we couldn't bring a lot of things with us, including like my favorite cookbooks. And so I started a blog as a way to kind of save some of my recipes that I couldn't take with me. And then I would adapt them and share them with somebody, and they'd be like, hey, I really want that recipe. Can you write it down for me? I was like, well, it would be easier if I just posted it on a website where you could find it. So that's kind of how the blog came about.
And it wasn't do you say Detoxinista or Detoxinista?
I would say Detoxinista.
Okay, I do too. And it's really funny because I have an old roommate who was one of my best friends, and we used your recipes and loved them so much. And she always said Detoxinista, and I always giggled at her. And because I would say Detoxinista, and I'm like, now that I'm talking to you, I should probably ask, was I right?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're both right, but yeah, the way I say it is Detoxinista.
But you didn't start out as Detoxinista.
I did not. Man, most people don't know what my first blog was. You know, and they can both be equally as embarrassing. Some people don't think Detoxinista is a very good name either. But my first blog was called Healthy Hagen.
I remember.
Which was embarrassing to even say out loud because Hagen just isn't really a very like appealing sounding name. And we joked because everyone who knew me, I mean, I like to eat. And when my friends and I get together, and especially my husband, he is like, he's all about like, we just eat some junk food sometimes. And so we would have, we would basically joke that we were pigs eating so much, and we would call them hog sessions. So, yeah, that's kind of how that name came about. And that blog actually started getting some traction from the recipes I was posting. And I realized I was really embarrassed to say it out loud, which isn't a great thing for like a brand. So that's when I made the switch to Detoxinista, because at that time I was still pretty heavily into the detox world that you and I both came from.
It's interesting that you say that you were like, some people disagree that Detoxinista is a great name, because I remember, and we were both food blogging at the time, and I tried so hard to make that work. And it just, after a while, I had to admit I didn't like it very much. And
right.
You were the person that I looked at and I was like, well, she's doing it. Like, I remember when you were Healthy Hagen, and I saw the way that you grew and your design grew and your brand grew. And after, I was like, you know what? She probably loves this and I don't love it, and I'm trying to love it. And in any case, when you started Detoxinista, I was like, damn it, that's it. That's brilliant. So I think it's fantastic. And it's super well suited, I think, because there are so many preconceived ideas when people hear the word detox. Like I said, they either freak out or they're like, oh my God, give me the most extreme thing. And they come to the Detoxinista herself and you're like, hey, it doesn't actually have to be so extreme. In fact, that's not even the most sustainable route.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not really that sustainable at all, which is why every now and then I regret the name, just because I'm like, oh, people are coming here and they want something drastic. And so many are disappointed when they're like, oh, she just cooks whole food recipes.
No, I think that you're redefining it. So I think it's...
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, I'm stuck with this name now. I'm embracing it. And yeah, now my goal is to, redefine basically what detoxing is and teach people the better way.
So to back up, though, to a time when maybe detox was an extreme thing to you, or maybe, well, I won't define what it was for you. How did you get into detox as people think of it now, and how did it go a little bit sour?
Well, I picked up, I was in college. I remember I had graduated college. I had just gotten my first job that I actually still have today. It was, I'm a greeting card illustrator, and I got my first desk job, and it was sitting for 9 hours a day. And I remember I was still kind of like not grasping the dieting thing. And I was looking for like the miracle answer to like figure out how I should eat for the rest of my life. Right. And I picked up the book by Natalia Rose, The Raw Food Detox Diet. And it was totally life-changing to me. The idea, like, she introduced me to food combining. She introduced me to the idea that, food matters, that like food can change how you feel and how you look. And the idea that I could get rid of the cravings that I have. Like, I just really thought it was my miracle answer. And honestly, I followed that book. I think I followed her advice for like 30 days and I lost like 15 pounds in a month. And I didn't really feel like I was doing anything that crazy. I mean, the food combining really worked for me. And so that was really great and dandy. And I would still recommend that book to people in the sense that like, I think it's pretty moderate advice. I like that she has the different levels for people. And I feel like if people are the type who are really honest with themselves and will start with where they should, I think that that's pretty decent advice. I, however, am a perfectionist and an overachiever to like detriment to myself. Right. And so I would always push myself too far. I'd be like, okay, well, this first 30 days, I was eating the Laura bars and the salads and I was feeling so good. And then I started thinking like, oh, well, maybe the Laura bars are too much sugar, or maybe I should be eating all raw and like really, get results faster. I think it was always about getting results faster or more drastic than I, probably should have even expected. And so she had a second book come out called Detox for Women, I think.
Yep.
And that book kind of changed my perspective to a drastic way in the sense that like all of a sudden sugar was bad. I took, it was me taking good advice too far and kind of turning it into like a bad approach for myself. And so I remember I went and did like this drastic sugar detox. I did a candida cleanse where you cut out all the sugar. And that's when I started really kind of doing harm to my mental health, I would say, in the sense that I would take things too far. And then I feel like however far the pendulum swings in one direction, it's going to inevitably swing back in the other direction. And then I would start, if I fell off the wagon or if I slipped up just a little tiny bit, I would use that as an excuse to completely fall off the wagon and to dive headfirst into binge eating. And so then it would take a drastic turn of like, I wouldn't just have a cookie, then I would have the whole box of cookies. And then the next day, well, I already blew it yesterday, so I might as well go to McDonald's and have a McDonald's breakfast. So that's when things started going sour for me.
Yeah. And what did you feel like when you were going more and more extreme, what were you hoping to get? Like, was it an idea of perfect health or a perfect body? Like when you say perfectionist, what was your hope?
For me, it was a lot of vanity with being skinny.
Sure.
I had moved to Los Angeles, so there were a lot of skinny people around me. My husband was working in the movie industry, and so there was like this pressure. And I mean, I'm working in the movie industry. I shouldn't have felt any pressure to be skinny, but I did. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, for me, it wasn't about health, which is also probably, something that wasn't working in my favor. I think I was doing things for the wrong reason. And so, yeah, I would say that's how it was going. It was for very poor reasons.
We can look at the wrong reason, but I feel like if we have any connection to ourselves and we start looking at these signals, so say we get into wellness because we want to be prettier or skinnier or whatever the thing is. And then if we can listen to the messages when things get really painful, like if the pendulum is swinging and there's binge eating and whatever, then you are able to move past, but you have all these new tools, like all of these ways of actually feeling better, because look at all that you've created out of that initial desire of just wanting to be thinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it only hurts when we get stuck there, and we can get stuck there, I think, for a really, really long time. But how long did you struggle with the binge eating? It's really interesting to me, actually. I'm going to back up even a little more, that you didn't seem to have any real food issues prior to the extreme dieting.
No, dieting is definitely what launched me into poor issues. Although I would say I've never had healthy diet habits.
Sure.
But because I ate junk food and I was raised, my mom didn't know she was feeding me poor quality food. McDonald's was just as good of a choice to her as any other homemade meal. We just didn't think about food quality growing up. And so I would say that when I started dieting, it's when I started labeling food as good or bad. And I have always been a goody two shoes type of person, type A, I get straight A's, I don't break the rules. And so I think when I started putting rules around food is when it was food was the place where I actually started to rebel in my life, I guess. And so it wasn't until I started labeling food as good or bad that I started having issues.
And then how long were you struggling with that? At what point were you this is really an issue?
Well, I would say
an emotional eater. Was it really alarming?
It got to a point where it was pretty bad. It got to the point where, and I would say this was at a time where I feel like a lot of these things expose themselves when you're also going through a rough time in other areas. I was at a point in my life where I was really lonely. I was really depressed. And I was really bored. I was working from home, so I didn't have a lot of human interaction during my day. And so I would say it was the worst when I was in this situation. And it got really bad right before I actually married my husband, because all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure to look perfect for your wedding pictures. Mm-hmm. And so I kept thinking okay, well, I'm just going to do a 90-day fast, or I'm going to do a raw food diet. And it'll be okay, because I'll just go into maintenance mode once the wedding's over. Which I always hear a lot of people say, I'm going to do something really drastic, but as soon as I reach whatever my goal is, then I'll become moderate. Yeah. And I feel like that just never works. And so it ended up being this awful cycle of super restriction for a few days and then super binge eating for a few days, to the point where I was becoming such a disordered eater that I would choose to stay home and hide and, binge my face on cookies than go out with my friends. Or I would tell my husband to go out without me because I would rather be at home eating than be out with people. And so that's when it was probably the worst. And I actually like had to break down in tears with him one day and like admit all of this. Cause I feel like it's the worst when it's a secret. Which binge eating is usually a very secretive activity that no one wants to admit, because it's super embarrassing to admit that you have a problem with food the way that, you know, others might have a problem with alcohol.
Absolutely. For some reason, that it does feel so much more shameful. And I think that it's more socially acceptable to shame people with extra fat on their bodies or with food issues than it is for alcohol or something like that. And yeah, it comes with a lot of secret, a lot of hiding, a lot of shame.
Yeah. So, yeah, it definitely got really bad. I would say that I suffered with it for at least 5 years before I even started to get better. And then I'd say like, it didn't even get completely like healed for me. And I would say it's a healing process. I hate for people to think that it's just like snap your fingers and one day you're better. Because it is like, I think a big, long process to get out of that. But I would say when I got pregnant with my first child, which was about 6 years ago, that's when it first really felt significantly better for me, because I was finally eating for a different reason, to like to have a healthy pregnancy and to, you know, feed the baby. And so that really helped me get out of it. And then I also felt this feeling of freedom in the sense that, I knew I was going to gain weight. I was pregnant. I knew my stomach was going to grow. And so it was something about like knowing that I was going to get bigger. All the pressure was off of, you know, I feel like I needed to fit into this like skinny vanity image that I had of myself. And it was so interesting to me that as soon as I opened up, I let myself, I was like, you know what, if you want to go to McDonald's and get French fries, you can, because you're pregnant. And as soon as I like let myself think that, the desire for the French fries was gone. Because I realized I don't really like the taste of McDonald's French fries anymore. Like, that's just not my thing. And so I realized like, as soon as I took the rules off myself, I was making food choices from such a healthier mindset. And I knew that as soon as I wasn't pregnant, I wanted to keep that mindset. So it's like, it's a shame that it took me till I was pregnant to like really experience that. But I'd say ever since, like, even though now I'm not pregnant, I still try to treat myself with like the same grace of, you know, leaving my options open and then making choices based on other like more sane reasons, like how I feel, how am I going to feel after I eat this? You know, I mean, it's such common sense, but when you're in a place of binge eating and kind of like
place of common sense.
So yeah. It's really interesting when you kind of like let go of some of those self-imposed rules.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say it's a shame that it took you till you were pregnant, but I actually think it's really beautiful that your journey turned out that way, especially now that you're publicly sharing it, because I think that, I mean, it's a process that I walk women through and that I went through in learning to eat all the scary things, putting on some weight, discovering what actually feels good rather than what makes you look good. And for you, it was like you had the gift of all of a sudden, there's this little person that you're also taking care of. And if we could learn to look at ourselves that way as, oh, we are as important. It is as important to take care of ourselves as it is the people that are in our care. I just wonder if that could shift some things for some people, because we can forget, especially as women, that we need to take care of ourselves with just as much tenderness as we do other people, which seems to come so much more easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you went through the process of removing the labels and realizing like, okay, calling things good and bad and being so extreme clearly isn't working. Were you just sort of muddling around in the dark? Did you have, I think you listed on your website a few books that you found helpful. Were you figuring things out just kind of as you went? Because like you said, it was a journey. It wasn't just one day you woke up and everything was good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I would pick up books. I actually remember I picked up a book that you recommended because I was always following you too. And I was still in that mentality of like, okay, you're going to read something and it's just going to magically click. And then you won't be a binge eater anymore. And so like I kept looking for answers in books. And I will say like there were definitely some books, there were like little pieces. I feel like pieces of books like put together did help me. I wouldn't say there was like a single book that was like the answer for me. But I do remember reading a book of like a former binge eater, and she was talking about how you do have to allow every food into your diet. Like you can't, mark something as off limits, or all of your focus will go to that food that's off limits. So there was a point where I was a vegetarian for years. When I met my husband, he was basically eating a vegan diet. So he was the person who got me to stop drinking milk because he was grossed out by it. Oh. And it was like the first time that that I had ever heard milk as being something that's gross. Because I was always raised that milk was like a super healthy choice for you.
Right.
And so I was, I guess I started kind of playing with diets, just meeting him. His brother was vegan. And so they kind of introduced me to some vegan foods, but we were still eating vegan junk food. We were eating, Oreos because they were vegan, and, the breadsticks from Pizza Hut you could get without the butter on it. There was just all sorts of options that were still totally junk food. But so I was vegetarian for years with him. And before we got married, and when I broke down in tears and told him about how much I had been suffering with the binge eating, he and I decided together that we would both stop being vegetarian to help with basically my mental health, to get me in a better spot. So we both went to one of our favorite restaurants. We were in Kansas City visiting some of our friends, and we decided to make like a celebration where we would both eat our first burgers together. And so we kind of dropped the labels, and that kind of got me going to a point that it was in a positive direction. I wish I could say that like I totally stopped binge eating after that, but it still happened. And I feel like it's important for people to know that just because you do fall back into like a binge eating session, it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means, it's a process.
Yes, exactly. Are you talking about brain over binge?
Yes. Yeah.
So interesting, Megan, is that you got this so much quicker than I did, because talking about the wedding thing, I went through the same thing before my wedding. I had done a 90-day juice fast, which was something.
I was always so amazed by your willpower, because I could not get through a 90-day one no matter how much I tried.
That is for the best. And I went through that, and then my wedding was like 4 months later, and it was like the same thing, sobbing on my kitchen floor, really extreme. And then like I started working at a raw food restaurant. So on the other side of the extreme, I was shoving like coconut oil, everything inside my mouth, anything that I could get in. It was terrible. And I read Brain Over Binge maybe after my wedding, and I blogged about it and everything. And I went through this period of feeling really high. And I feel like we can do this not just with diet books, but like with self-help books, where we're like, oh my God, I figured out everything. I figured out the answers. Now I'm done. I'm healed. Because the way that she presented it was so different. It was such a different perspective. But I did this for a lot of books, I realize in hindsight, managed to ignore the part where you're supposed to stop dieting. Because I was like, okay, I can do all of this. And that doesn't apply to me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Definitely been there.
So do you think it was like the pregnancy thing and things just getting so bad that made you finally see that? Because it was like, I didn't even see it as an option for me.
Yeah. I will say the pregnancy thing really helped, which I hate to say because I don't want somebody who's like not planning on getting pregnant to like think that like, oh, well, I'm not going to get pregnant, so I'm never going to find like
right. Well, and I eventually figured it out too. It just took a little longer.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely kept trying to get around the not dieting thing because I was like, well, I want to find a cure, but I don't want to gain a pound while I do it. Mm-hmm. And that's just not... I will say, I don't think I gained that much. And I think ultimately I did end up losing a lot more. And there are potato chips in my diet now. Like, I wish I could tell somebody like, hey, guess what? You can eat potato chips and lose weight and not think about food all day long. Because my life used to be literally thinking about food all day long, either because I wasn't eating things and then that took over my life, thinking about all the things I wasn't eating, or, oh, well, in 30 days, I'll treat myself to this once, and then I'll go back to my perfect diet again. And so, I wish somebody would tell you that, you do have to give up the diets. It doesn't mean you can't experiment with things. Like somebody actually asked me, I did an elimination diet a few months ago after I did like this blood test. I did one of those Everlywell tests that you can do at home. And I did a blood test because I was just curious. I was having this, and I mean, I am a mom to 2 kids now. And so, and I have a full-time job and I do the blog and I was writing a cookbook. And so it could have just been that my lifestyle was making me exhausted, but I was feeling this like really drugged exhaustion, like as if I had taken a sleeping pill. And so I took this test just to see if, maybe I was eating something that I was sensitive to. And somebody asked me like, hey, if you're going to restrict these foods, like, do you think that's going to trigger your binge eating again? Mm-hmm. And I was actually really kind of nervous about it myself. But I will say, like, for the most part, if you're restricting for a very purposeful reason and it's not about vanity, like if it's not about, getting skinnier or losing weight or whatever your, purpose might be. For me, it was really about like being a detective. And in that case, it was pretty easy for me to, I still hate potato chips. So I guess I should say that I was not like doing some perfect diet, but I had cut out gluten and dairy and corn and peanuts and, a host of things that did make my diet somewhat restrictive. But I would say if you're going to do anything like that, like still have some vices. Like, I think that's actually one thing that keeps me sane now, is that people are usually shocked that I do still have vices that keep me sane and kind of keep me in check, knowing that I'm not a perfectionist. And I feel like I'm never allowed to be a perfectionist when it comes to my diet again, in order to be sane with my mental health.
Well, because I think perfectionism takes the body out of the picture as like your partner in this journey. And we have to be able to engage, because there's you and there's all of the things that you love and there's your life. And then there's your body that says, hey, this works for me and this doesn't. And when we go perfectionist or we go on a diet or we disconnect, then it's just never going to work. The body is going to pull you back. And I think this is a piece with the binge eating too that isn't talked about enough, is just the physiological needs of the body at any given time. And often if we're restricting a macronutrient that we're in need of, or just calorically that we're in need of, it's not just a mental emotional game. The body will say, I need this right now.
Absolutely. And yeah, I feel like anytime you're doing something restrictive, usually you are, whether you mean to or not, restricting calories. And so your body will, it's such a primal instinct to binge, in the sense that like, oh my gosh, you've been restrictive and now you're going to eat food because your body is like craving it because you've been so mean to it.
Right. And people get into this like, oh my God, I just self-sabotaged. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, you saved yourself. Your body saved you. We have to learn to trust those signals, those messages.
Mm-hmm.
And with the elimination diet too, I ended up after I gave up all of the food rules and was really just exploring and poking around and figuring out what worked, I also got into some health stuff, symptoms coming up that I had never dealt with before. And so I did the elimination diet too. And I think it's because it is in partnership with your body. It's saying like, okay, how I'm feeling is not how I want to feel. Now I'm going to consciously remove these things and do this in the easiest way possible. Like you said, like make sure you have the things you love that are within this context, and then listen. Then you're listening. You're not just checked out and doing the thing, waiting for your result.
Yeah. And I think it's also good to know, like with the elimination diet, at least in my case, when I reintroduced the foods and I found out that gluten makes me feel like I took a sleeping pill and that I'm just going to be drowsy for the rest of the afternoon. I think once you have those answers, you can also choose what to do with that information. Like, I'm okay with, feeling like I've been drugged if it's a really special occasion. But you kind of like know the consequences before you even act. So I feel like you make really informed choices, without you still don't have to be crazy restrictive. You just have to make informed choices later.
Yes, 100%. So then how did your approach, as you're blogging, you're sharing recipes, you're letting go of your rules, how did your approach to creating food and sharing your food philosophy change?
Well, that was actually really tricky for me because I felt like I had built my brand on the concept of food combining and the concept of detoxing. And I was really embarrassed. Like, I did not talk about binge eating when I was in the midst of it. Because it's embarrassing. And so I wanted to make sure I was really out of it before I talked about it, because I would hate to try to I feel like as soon as you talk about it on a public platform, people kind of take it as gospel, or like you're teaching them how to get out of it. And I wasn't sure that I was out of it for a really long time. So I didn't feel like talking about it until I knew that I really felt like I was in a good, healthy place. So I feel like people felt a shift in my recipes in the sense that I did start posting some like not properly combined recipes on my blog, because a lot of my recipes are on there and I still do. Food combining has like been so ingrained in me that I feel like naturally I lean that way, whether I even mean to or not. So a lot of my meals are properly combined, but I didn't focus on it so much. And when I would write a post, I would basically write what I was feeling at the time. So I think people saw me getting in a healthier mind space just because I was in one and I was writing the way I was feeling. So I feel like the blog had a really, really gentle transition to the point where it is today. And so it just started being filled with recipes I was loving. I would try to share what I was eating, and be really honest when I, had something from Starbucks, or, I try to sprinkle in some real life food where I do have vices, but while still trying to keep it inspirational. Cause I know I wouldn't want to follow an account that was like, sharing junk food all the time, but, it's a really fine balance, I feel like, to, and it was really realistic in the sense of where I was. I would say, like, as I got into a healthier mind space, so did the blog.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you even talk about, especially in your post on binge eating, the tools that you used to get you to a place of clarity and sanity. And one of the things that you bring up is daily self-care. What does that look like for you at this point? Like, you're a mom, you write cookbooks, you run this blog, you run this whole business brand. How do you take care of yourself so that you actually are staying connected to your body?
Well, this is not the best week for me to do that. We did the cookbook launch last week. So, but on an average day, not this week where I'm not getting that great of sleep, I would say getting regular sleep is really important. On days that I can, I like set a really strict bedtime of 10 p.m. for myself. Right now, people who don't know how I work like from 8 to 5 during the day. And then when my kids go to bed, they go to bed pretty early, like at 7. I usually work on my blog from 7 to 10. While my husband and I watch a show together or something. I try to be around him, but I'm usually on my computer. Yeah. But when it's not a crazy time like this, I take 1 hour of my evening, like this, as soon as the kids go to bed, I go to my basement, because we moved to the Midwest 3 years ago. And so now we have a house with a basement, which is fantastic because we used to live in a little 1-bedroom apartment. But we have a sauna that I bought when we moved here because it's cold. And in California, it wasn't that cold. So we had to figure out a way to cope with the cold weather. And so we bought an infrared sauna, and we have it set up in our basement, and it has like a tablet in the sauna. So we preheat the sauna as soon as the kids go to bed. And as soon as we're both downstairs, we go down there and we watch a show on Netflix, and we sit in the sauna for an hour.
Oh, I love that.
And that's like my daily self-care. So I would say, like, most days when I'm not in a crazy cookbook time, that's like non-negotiable for me. Like, I have to get in my sauna or I'm in a pretty, like, I just don't feel myself. And once a week I do get a massage, because it's like, I'm a very high stress person. And the massage is like the one way that like someone can physically like force me to relax. So that's been very helpful. I actually, I went through a phase, and part of that was, I don't know if you read my post on stevia on the blog, but when I was doing the Candida thing and got really into stevia and cutting out like all sugars, I lost my period for like, I think at least a year. And it was stressful just because Austin and I were planning on having a family in the relatively near future at the time. And the only thing that could make I had to quit the stevia. I couldn't get my period while I was on stevia. But then even when I quit the stevia, I think I was so stressed all the time that my cycle was all out of whack. And when I started getting weekly massages, they would they would keep me regular. So if I missed a massage, I would also miss my period. It was just one of those things where like I really had to get that physical, like somebody had to force relaxation on me or my body would kind of stay out of whack.
Right. But I mean, the fact that you recognize that was huge, because I think it's a huge piece that we're missing in the wellness and detox world, that stress is a bigger factor than food.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I'm healthier now. And I mean, I'm a pretty stressed person still, but I think I'm healthier now that I have these methods of relaxing, and I still will have, you know, dietary vices in my life, but I take really good care of my, like making sure I get stress relief every day.
And vices too. I feel like it's so different than it maybe is in the mainstream world, because you're just talking about you're eating foods that you like. It's just
Yes.
foods that you like. It just may not always be, you know, top of your game. You feel absolutely the best, but it's what you really, really like.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I realized that when I didn't let myself have those, and I mean, my vices are like, I like potato chips, but I'm really picky about them. Like, not because of like nutritional value, but because of flavor almost. Like I like potato chips that are just 3 ingredients, like potatoes, olive oil, and salt. And if it's a different kind of oil, I think they taste bad. And then like I like heavy whipping cream in my coffee. And so that's a vice I've let myself have. And that's like a teaspoon a day. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. If that affects me, so be it. And every now and then I'll play around with not having it. This week, I'm actually not having the cream in my coffee. And I've been playing around with blending cashew butter and dates into my coffee. And that's pretty fantastic. So I've been really happy with that. But I do feel like if there's just some food that you love, and, you know, I mean, once you let yourself have it, like I keep a bag of potato chips in my closet at all times, which I used to be of the mindset of like, oh, you've got to get all that junk food out or else you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
I keep it in my house, and you know what? Like I literally, if I'm craving a potato chip, I go and I eat like 3, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done. That's good.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm like watching calories. It's because like, oh, well, I wanted that, and now I've had it, and now I'm done. And I know that that's not going to keep me happy for like a lunch, so I'm not going to have that for a lunch. But you know, it's just one of those things. If you have it around and you make it not a big deal, then it's not a big deal, and that's pretty awesome.
Which is, I'm sure, something that you couldn't have even fathomed when you were in the middle of trying to get the perfect detox diet and swinging from binge eating and back.
No, I mean, I would have gone through a whole bag of potato chips in a day, and then I would have trashed the evidence.
Yep.
And I would have felt so bad. And then I would have eaten a fake dinner in front of my husband because I'd want him to think I'm eating healthy. So then I would have been like piling extra food on top of my already upset stomach just so that nobody would know. And so now it's like so different in the sense that like, you know, maybe we'll go out and get French fries with our friends. But if I'm full after those French fries, I'm not going to eat on top of that because my body is telling me it's already satisfied. So it's such a different mindset to be in.
It really is. And I remember thinking like someday when I'm perfectly clean, like I've done the detox diet for so long and I'm so healthy and I'm so vibrant, like then I will feel free. Then I'll feel all of the things that I want to feel in my life and my body, and all of my stress will be gone and all of this stuff. But it's not that. It's never going to be some external goal that we get to, and then all of a sudden we're all the things that we want to be. It's, you really truly have to start inviting some of that stuff in now, even if it looks non-perfect. It's where you're at. It's honoring who you are and what you love and what you need. And
absolutely.
So
I think that's like fake it till you make it.
Sometimes, and not even faking, maybe a bit of faking it, but honoring like the seeds of what's already in there, like not just pretending to be happy, but truly exploring the things that actually do make you happy instead of waiting for someday when I've lost the weight and then I can do that thing.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
And so I'm curious, I'm going to tie it up with this question. And I have a lot of people on the podcast who are very like kind of hippie, like maybe into some new age stuff. And I love this conversation because you're definitely a bit more type A, and you've got your whole cookbook line and everything is amazing. So I really want to hear how you answer this question. The name of the podcast being Free Spirit Academy, I define a free spirit is just like you when you get to be you. So me when I get to be myself, and you when you get to be yourself. And for you, with everything that you have been through and in your journey, how would you describe a free spirit, or maybe moments when you feel a sense of free spiritedness?
I mean, I think a free spirit is just a person who's so content where they are and just like appreciating like the space that they're in right now. And so I feel like there's definitely moments where I feel that, and it's like the best feeling. I wish that for everybody.
And it doesn't come from the perfectionism or getting to some sort of end.
No, no.
Amazing. And lastly, would you tell us about your most recent book?
Yeah. So last week we released the Fresh and Healthy Instant Pot Cookbook, which is, if you're not familiar with the Instant Pot, I fell in love with it only recently, like in the last year and a half. But it's an electric pressure cooker, so it's not like a slow cooker in the sense that things cook quickly. Like usually within some things have a 4-minute cook cycle, but I would say on average dinners are ready in about 30 minutes. And the cool thing that really got me into pressure cooking is that research has shown that pressure cooking preserves more nutrition than any other method of cooking. So steaming and baking tend to like preserve 60% of the nutrients in food, and pressure cooking can preserve up to 90% of the nutrition in your food. So I thought that was really cool. It got me kind of into it. And then what really sold me on pressure cooking is that you can cook 2 dishes at the same time in the same pot in less than 30 minutes. So the new book is filled with, it's so cool.
2 dishes.
You'll have to watch one of my YouTube videos.
Okay.
I'll show you.
I'm behind.
But you cook a main course on the bottom, and then you put a little metal trivet on top of that, and then you put a bowl of like raw rice and water. Or one of my favorite dishes is you do, there's a vegan shepherd's pie where it's like a lentil chickpea mushroom filling on the bottom. Mm-hmm. And then you put in a trivet and a bowl of raw cauliflower florets on top. And you seal the lid and you cook it for 5 minutes. And when you take off the lid, your cauliflower is like mashed potatoes. So you have cauliflower mashed potatoes, and then you take out that bowl and you can mash it with a fork. And then the bottom, the red lentils dissolve into like a naturally thick gravy without using flour. There's no added fat or oil in it because it's like a dump recipe like you do in a slow cooker. And then you have this mashed cauliflower that you can spoon over the gravy lentil chickpea filling, and it smells like Thanksgiving, and it's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, that is unreal. And my mom keeps texting me and asking me if I've gotten an Instant Pot yet. So this has got to be the tipping point. I've got to do it.
You've got to try it. Black Friday will probably have a great sale on it. So you should do that and pick up the book at the same time. And there's like just all sorts of recipes like that. This is my first book that actually calls for meat recipes. My first 2 books are vegetarian. And this one, we decided that a lot of people who own Instant Pots do eat meat. And we wanted to offer some like vegetable forward spins on it. So like I would say every recipe that I did with meat in it, I added at least a pound of vegetables into the meat. So there's like a barbecue shredded chicken where I added a pound of shredded cabbage to the shredded chicken. And when they like cook together, you can't tell the difference of like what's cabbage or what's chicken. So it was kind of my way of sneaking vegetables into people's meals. But then for every recipe that calls for meat, there's also a tested vegan alternative. So I tried to make both my vegan readers happy and my meat eating readers happy. So hopefully there's something in there for everybody.
I love that so much because it's everything that you're talking about. Because people, I think, can maybe get the idea that, oh, if I want to be healthy, I have to be vegetarian, but I just don't really like vegetables. And you're like, hey, have what you need. And here's a whole pile of vegetables you won't even know, or you'll actually really like it, surprise. Or maybe you can begin easing it out. If that's
exactly.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Like I was telling you, I send clients your way all the time when they've kind of gotten over the hump of, past the all you can eat phase into the very often I don't feel so well, but I don't want to go crazy. I send them your direction for recipes. So
thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that folks here will hear this and be encouraged to do the same. you enjoyed this conversation. For more on food and body freedom, get my free ebook, The Eat to Feel Good Diet, by signing up for newsletter updates at freespirit-academy.com. I will be back with you next week.